Good evening. I would like to call the business meeting of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Tuesday, May 1st, 2018, and the Portland Board of Public Education is meeting at Peaks Island Elementary School. May I please ask the superintendent to call the roll?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Atkinson? Here. Ms. Seeliger? Ms. Van Dill?
Here.
Ms. Davis?
Here.
Ms. Thompson?
Here.
Ms. Morioni? Mr. Rodriguez?
Presente.
Mr. Balfonts? Ms. Clater?
Here.
Ms. Farah? Ms. Yuri?
Here.
Ms. Power-Rakowski? And Chair Trevorrow.
And Mr. Balfonts did let me know he was sorry to miss this evening. He had a work obligation he couldn't get out of. Ms. Morioni let me know that she is sick. She also was sorry to have missed coming out this evening. And Ms. Rakowski-Powers let me know that she just started a new job and she's working tonight. So would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the chair's report this evening, I just wanted to remind board members, I emailed you a couple days ago to reserve May 8th, that's next Tuesday, for a special board meeting regarding the budget. Following the Joint Finance Committee meeting that we had last week with the City Council, they, among a list of requests that our staff is working to prepare for them, they also asked us to do a little extra work, which is to kind of go back and revisit what we've been looking at to see what a budget would look like with some further reductions. So Ms. Vendel and I discussed how we would kind of frame that workshop with the board, and we're going to go back to where the Finance Committee kind of left off when the Finance Committee was looking at a list of potential reductions. We're going to kind of start there. And if people have additional things that they want to see costed out and brought into that discussion, please get those to the superintendent and Alicia as soon as you can before that meeting. But that's what we're going to be doing on May 8th. And the council will be having a public hearing and their first read on Monday, May 7th. And then their finance committee will be voting out our budget on May 9th. On Wednesday. The other thing, I just wanted to congratulate the superintendent who was awarded by the United Way recently for his work for the district in the area of equity in education. So congratulations, Superintendent Report. That, of course, reflects favorably on the entire district, so we're proud of that. And that concludes the chair's report. So we don't have, or do we? We don't have a student report this evening. Report of the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to begin by thanking our hosts today. The Peaks Island Parent-Teacher Organization has been a wonderful asset to the Portland Public Schools. Today, as they do every day, they went above and beyond to host a wonderful community get-together as part of our board meeting. This has become somewhat of a tradition for the board and one that I hope will continue for years to come. We have a very full agenda today, so I'm going to keep my remarks short. This past Saturday, the board's Public Affairs Committee sponsored a community forum on the district's move towards proficiency-based diplomas. I was encouraged by the turnout and the positive conversations that we had. I'm thankful to Assistant Superintendent Malia Nally and her team and all of our secondary principals who came out on a beautiful spring weekend afternoon to share their knowledge about the reasons why we are working to embrace the practices that are the hallmark of the proficiency-based system. The session was broadcast live on Facebook and is available on YouTube, so if you missed it, please take the opportunity to watch it and see for yourselves. Also on Saturday, we had our Parent University session on how to transform schools to be responsive to the needs of gender-expansive students. This coming Thursday, May 3rd, we're scheduled to be at Presumpscott Elementary for the next Parent University session on building relationships across cultures. The session will cover recent research findings on identity development and unconscious bias, followed by a discussion on how these factors affect building relationships with those who may be different from us. We will share stories and resources, practice some new skills, ask candid questions, in the process get to know each other a little better. The session will be led by, interestingly enough, Peaks Islander Ann Sibley O'Brien, a children's book writer, illustrator, and diversity educator. Her childhood in Korea kindled lifelong fascination with the beauty and challenge of human differences. We hope you will be able to join us for another outstanding Parent University event. As you saw a couple minutes ago, May is Teacher Appreciation Month, and our senior leadership team is planning to go out to each of our schools this month to thank our staff for the tremendous work that they do each and every day to provide a quality education for our students. As we watch events unfolding across multiple states where teachers are walking off the jobs that they love to bring attention to the plight of their schools, I am more than ever grateful that this community supports its schools and is committed to ensuring that our educators know that, and that they know that, and that we are working, that we appreciate the work and we value and support what they're doing. We will also be thanking our wonderful volunteers for the work that they do every day to support our teachers and students. On May 10th, from 4 to 6 p.m., we will gather at East End Community School for a celebration and thank you to the nearly 700 individuals and countless organizations that have given over 90,000 hours of their time and talent to make our schools great this year. I hope you will be able to join us for that as well. Finally, I would like to recognize the Odyssey of the Mind team of 7th graders from Lyman Moore Middle School who won the first place award at the Odyssey of the Mind State Finals Tournament this month. We look forward to following their progress to the national level. Congratulations to these outstanding Lyman Moore students and their parent coaches, Katie Milliken and Holly Sheehan. I look forward to recognizing these students at a future board meeting. And that concludes my report.
Report of the Secretary. Consideration and action to approve the meeting minutes of April 24th, 2018. Is there a motion? Ms. Thompson, seconded by Ms. Davis. Are there any questions regarding the minutes? Seeing none, any public comment on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the meeting minutes of April 24th, 2018, please indicate. Okay, so 1, 2, 5 in favor and 1 abstention. And we don't have report of committees this evening. So we're moving on to consent items. Would the superintendent like to, oh, Mr. Rodriguez, sorry.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I know that we're on a tight budget. Oh, timeline. Something's on my mind. So I just wanted to, I know that last week I wasn't there. Superintendent Botana gave a quick summary about our most recent committee meeting for the Operations Committee. I just wanted to give my official report. We did meet back in April 16th, and we had the first of a part of series of department presentations, department sets. So Stephen Stilfen from our facilities department gave a presentation. We're very thankful for him. I thought it was very insightful, allowed the committee members to explore some information about how we staff our maintenance department, how we're going to change the way that the department manages requests for maintenance throughout the district. And all in all, it's just really important information that allows board members to better navigate some of the other aspects of the greater work that we do throughout the district. So again, thank you, Mr. Stilfen, for the presentation. And we're scheduled to meet on May 22nd for our next meeting. That's going to be at Central Office at 6 p.m. And I believe our second of the informational series will be presented. We're expecting the Food Services Department to present. I also wanted to update the public and the board that the City Council approved the manager's recommended CIP request, which included our recommendation or our recommended FY19 projects, which is a total of just over $4 million, and everything that we requested was part of the entire approved. This is a large, or rather a significant number of projects, maintenance projects that are important to the everyday and even long-term work of the district, including some ADA compliance issues and some engineering issues for some of the buildings like Portland High School roof and so on. So we're very happy for the City Council, and we thank them for their support of our schools. I also, since I have the microphone, and I'm going really fast here, I just wanted to give I know, again, superintendents, there's a string to it, you can just pull it in. Again, I know Superintendent Botana gave a quick summary last week about the Buildings for Our Futures Committee, and I know that the board approved the RFP that was put forward, so I want to thank my colleagues for that. And I want to thank Councilor Justin Costa. I know that he showed up and he was available to answer questions as co-chair of that committee, so I thank him for that. I know that part of the questions and some of the concerns that were raised that evening had to do with the process. And I just wanted to add that moving forward, as the timeline gives us a little bit more breathing room, I hope to be able to update the board more frequently on what's going on in that committee, so that when those items do come up to vote, that we all feel like we're better informed. And I think, like Councilor Costa mentioned last week, the fact that we were pressed in time made us move forward a bit faster than we would have liked to, and we were sort of kind of obligated to make sure we brought something forward to the board that you guys could act on and keep us within that important timeline. So again, I thank you guys for approving that, and I'll make best effort possible moving forward to keep everybody updated as the process moves along. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just want to add very quickly for the board that there is at your desk, there is a revised RFP for the architect and engineering design services. This does not have material changes. They are primarily changes about different requirements from the city that were worked out between Mr. Stilfen and city staff subsequent to the meeting, and we do not believe that this changes the RFP substantially. You have I believe you have a red line copy in your packet, so you can judge for yourselves, but this is scheduled to go out in a week, and then it's scheduled to close on June 12th. So there were some changes to it, and I just wanted to make sure that you saw what those were. So that's it.
Would the superintendent like to read the consent items?
Lincoln Middle School received the following donations: supplies to use towards the Student Wellness Team's Water Week, encouraging students to drink more water from Hannaford Supermarket of Scarborough, cash donation from Ardo Sharif as a thank you to Portland, Maine, as this is their child's last year at Lincoln, and a gift card to use to purchase motivational prizes for students from Walmart of Falmouth. So thank you very much to all of our donors.
Thank you. And next we have the board focus on educational issues. We have an equity audit presentation. And would the superintendent like to speak to this?
First, we actually have two board focus items. One is our review of our equity work, and the other one is on the math curriculum adoption. First is the equity work. As you know, equity is one of our 4 Portland Promise goals, and the most cross-cutting as it refers to our achievement, our whole student, and our people goal. The performance and opportunities available to our students of color, our poor students, our students whose first language is not English, are considerably lower and fewer than for our non-economically disadvantaged English-speaking, generally white students. So as a district, we have taken the bold position that we need to work to remove the barriers that exist within our institution to enable student motivation and potential, rather than family background or country of origin determine their performance or access. Our work in this area is well underway, and today our equity specialist Barrett Wilkerson will lead a presentation where we will showcase some of the strategies that were approved as part of the Portland Promise and talk about our progress to date. In this presentation, we will also introduce you to the Center for Educational Equity staff who are with us this week and will be working to help us operationalize our equity audit strategy. So with that, Barrett.
All right. Just take 1 second to get organized here by reintroducing myself. Barrett Wilkinson, Equity Specialist for Portland Public Schools, and I'm going to help us do a snapshot equity update. The good news about our equity work is that it's actually really hard to just limit it in a lot of ways, and so I've brought some very willing experts from across our district to help us do this update. And there we go, equity goal update, and it's good that it's not me, the equity specialist, doing an achievement update, because that would be awkward. So, so of course, our Portland Promise Equity Goal is about vigilance in supporting all students achieving their particular path to success and rooting out our systemic inequities that exist. I know you've been provided with different definitions of equity, but just to keep us rooted in that, this is another image. You've seen probably things like this. This one's nice because it's about schools. You know, there's still something missing for me, and I think it's about, like, if I knew that the books were, like, culturally relevant and had diverse representation of our students and things like that. But you get the point that we are not talking about equality and treating everyone the same. Equity is about, is more individual, and it's about what is that access, what does that look like for everyone. So in the Portland Promise, we have these 2 measures, which are very much proxies for a lot of ways we could talk about equity. So that's about looking at the academic outcomes and improving proportional participation in our programs. So you've seen this before. This is just one example, one way we can look at disparity. So this is about economic disadvantage. The purple bar, we'd want that to look the same. Economic disadvantage, we should see dissatisfaction with this. Economic disadvantage should not determine, in comparison, should not determine success on standardized testing. Same goes for Chapter 104, otherwise known as gifted and talented participation. So we've had some increase from students of color in gifted and talented participation. 6 strategies in the Portland Promise around equity. And what we want to do for you tonight is give you at least one example in each of those strategies of what this looks like on the ground. So people who are willing to have a ferry ride on this beautiful day have joined me to be able to do that. So I'm going to invite Grace Valenzuela to come do the first strategy update, which is around family partnership.
Hi, it's like Pecha Kucha. Have you been to that one? It's 1 minute per slide, so it's a lot of, it's hard to, I don't want to waste my time. So on your desk, is a Family Partnership Advisory Committee members. So just so you know who the members of the committee are. So we have formed that committee this year. It's part of the board policy, and we have engaged the committee in looking at some of the projects that we are attending to, like the parent survey is one, and then of course their feedback on Parent University, their input on developing Parent University, which is one of the activities as well that's listed. So that has been a very, very successful program, and I want to read to you some of the comments. They're about, an average attendance is about 50. We had over 400 people who have attended 8 different sessions of Parent University. And some of the comments are, our community needs more conversations and cross-cultural pollination like this one. Thank you for creating the opportunity for us to grow together and learn from one another. I'm grateful for Parent U and certainly appreciate the food provided. Thank you for establishing Parent U. The topics look great and helpful. It takes a village, and this program is a good way to partner both parents and administrators. Thanks for organizing, introducing us to books and topics we might not have come across otherwise, and offering a place for us to connect and discuss issues that are important for families, kids, and communities. I want to keep going to parent and university offerings, and Javier Botana rocks. Really cares about students and community. Thank you so much. And we have also engaged with Javier, starting to build a relationship with PTO as a district, not only with the school engagement with a PTO, but also engaging the whole community of PTO as a parent group. So those are the strategies or activities we have done for family partnership.
Thank you, Grace. So our second strategy is about removing barriers, and this is really about the practice of looking at policies and what we need to do to make them more equitable. So I have 3 friends who have joined me. I'm going to keep calling them friends, so hopefully that they're not upset about getting on the 8:45 boat. So we'll start with Dr. Ahmed, assistant principal at Deering, and Greg Palmer, who's principal at Deering, to talk about some of the work that they have. I don't know who wants to go first. Your call.
Yeah, we'll go to you. So the first item, which is challenged by Joyce at Deering High School, is a practice where students are allowed and their parents actually to use, even if the teachers recommended them in certain classes. So with that, the practice was there, but 3 years ago, actually, we had about 12% of the minorities or the kids of who were not English language speakers as their first language, were about 12% of the kids who are taking the AP classes. And that time we were offering about 13 AP courses. And we deliberately tried, I won't be talking about the strategies, but we tried to increase these numbers. And this year we have about 41% of the kids who are taking AP classes are from the language minority students. So this was done by actually using the Challenge by Joyce practice, and also using some strategies which we can talk in detail in other times. But this is one of the interventions and equity process to achieve equity in our school.
I should say that our best Challenge by Choice practice is Dr. Ahmed. He took that on as a personal challenge in his work structures that he doesn't have to be in control of, but that have set up those realities for our students. So our graduate, I mentioned a small thing about Challenge by Choice is as we prepare students for next year, we're actually asking them to slow down, to maybe take a course, 1 or 2 courses, fewer courses than they might have before, and to challenge themselves with those other courses, to get additional support and take on that Challenge by Choice in that way. So the graduation ceremony is kind of about student voice. We have worked our advisories. We have 65 plus advisories in our school, and we've set up systems so they kind of act as an electoral college. So students can submit ideas for how to improve Deering High School. Those ideas are vetted by our President's Council, our Students' President's Council. They write the final bills that they want to put out to students from that collection of ideas from across the school, and then each advisory debates and votes and casts a vote on the given bill. How that advisory arrives at that decision is up to them, whether it's majority vote or consensus, and so we count each advisory's vote. Through that process, students decided, we worked with our GSA group at Deering, and decided that color of graduation gown isn't designated by perceived gender roles, but by choice. And so also students voted to be able to decorate their mortarboards, which was interesting because, and when we talked to them about kind of why that had come up, it was about students wanting to talk about what's important to them. And so some students will decorate their mortarboards with diversity rainbow and other things as well. But it was about voicing the things that are important to them, and a couple of other tweaks around graduation. So that's what that was. Thank you.
Thank you both for those examples from Deering. And now I'd like to invite Principal Ben Donaldson up from Lyman Moore Middle to talk about some of their policy changes.
Garrett, for putting an embarrassing picture of me on this slide. So it's very fitting. Thank you. I had a haircut then, yes. Thank you, Javier. I'm due for my biennial, so. It's fitting that we're in an elementary school where you all do really well to teach explicitly academic and behavioral expectations. And over the last bit of time at the middle level, we've started doing the same thing. And we know that all kids don't succeed when everything is implicit, when we imply what we want and we kind of make kids guess what the expectations are. So at Moore, we worked really purposefully to make academic expectations very clear for kids and to make behavior and habits of work and learning really explicit and clear for kids. And we help them see the connection, but we also help them see those two things as separate. Because who they are as an academic student is important for them to know, to figure out what they need to do next. And who they are as a person and their habits of work and learning are, we believe, equally important in how they're developing as a person and a scholar, really. So all of our support systems are aligned to our habits of work and learning. We want all kids to be respectful, responsible, and to learn to persevere in the face of challenges. So any support that we're giving to kids, any conversations that we're having are steeped in those basic ideas, and we're not throwing a lot of other things at them. So we keep it basic, we keep it specific and routine, and we think that allows kids to feel more comfortable and feel like they know what's expected of them. And then they're able to be their best selves and to perform. So that's at Moore, but also across the middle level, we have a lot of shared commitment to these practices. So.
And just a very brief additional note on the removing barriers, which of course you know all well, is our transgender and gender expansive students policy rollout, which I will provide some final numbers on in terms of like how many staff we trained and what they thought about the rollout and things like that to you, because I think you would find it interesting, and quite frankly, I've been getting a lot of credit for your hard work in talking about the policy and helping staff understand their role with it. And they're like, oh, Barrett, this is amazing. And I'm like, this was our Board of Education. But I will just tell you briefly that by the end of the school year, all schools will have had orientation to this policy so that they really understand what this thing is, not just having heard it in the news or in our newsletters in the district. And then this picture is from the parent university that Javier mentioned earlier. So this is Alexander Fitzgerald and Izzy Smith, who are two seniors at Deering High School, who are the co-chairs of the GSA, who have been helping me do these trainings, which has been so much more fun than me doing these trainings on my own. And I've had student representation at other schools as well, but they really have stepped up. They participated in the district level training that we did at central office and with parent university. So I'm so honored to have gotten to know them through this work. And some of you know them from having met with them during the policy drafting stage. So they're still in it. And they're both accepted to college and going on to do great and brilliant things, and we're definitely going to miss them. So another strategy, our third strategy, is about the equity audits, which is what I'm going to yield a lot of time to the Center for Education Equity to tell you about who they are and what they do, so that as we are getting started, you really have an understanding of that. So designing system-wide equity audits is quite an endeavor, and we have found, in doing research, connected with Carmen Roland, who you'll meet in a minute, as well as Susan Villani, who represent the Center for Education Equity, who are experts in this and are doing this work and are really going to, I think, be very helpful to us in designing a process that is right and is right for us and will be ongoing. This will not be something that's completed the next time I get to come do an equity update for you, but we'll be able to talk about progress to that point. So with that, I will turn it over to Susan and Carmen.
Good evening. So my name is Carmen Rowland. I'm the Associate Director of Training and Technical Assistance at the Center for Education Equity. Before I was at the Center for Education Equity at MAC, I worked for 4.5 years at the DC office of the State Superintendent of Education, where I worked in special education policy and data systems. And before that, currently my work is around cultural competence training, anti-bias training, and using data to drive equity decision making.
And I'm Susan Villani, and I work also at the Center for Education Equity, and I come as a partnership from West Ed, which is a nonprofit agency, and the work that we do is in a multitude of ways to support districts and departments of ed. My experience as a elementary and middle years principal for 21 years in 3 different districts has positioned me well to combine that with my teaching experience and my experience teaching graduate students dimensions of equity courses has helped me learn a lot about the life of students in schools and also understand from the inside what it's like to try to be a teacher and to try to be a good administrator. And so the work that we want to do with you would be in service of you. And though we have learned a number of things in our career, our goal is to be able to provide resources, processes, support, coaching, as would be helpful in partnership, in a collaboration. We believe strongly that it is through collaboration that lasting change can happen.
Yes. Thank you, Susan. So we just want to give you a little bit of background on the Center for Education Equity, just so you know more about our center. So the Center for Education Equity is actually housed at MAC, the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium. MAC envisions a day when all students have equitable opportunities to learn and achieve at high levels, and our mission is to promote excellence and equity in education to achieve social justice, and we accomplish this through our core values of excellence, equity, integrity, innovation, and synergy. At the Center for Education Equity, we have a partnership with West Ed, Susan Villani here, and also American Institutes for Research, AIR. And we're one of 4 regional equity assistance centers funded by the U.S. Department of Education under the Title IV of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And we primarily work in the areas of race, gender, national origin, language, and religion. And there's also a 5th one that they added on, which is SES integration, socioeconomic status and class. Our region, we are known as the Region 1 Equity Assistance Center, and our region is that expansive there, that massive 15 states and territories, including Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, so a wide-ranging area of the U.S., covering lots of different issues and lots of people who are committed to the work of equity, just like yourselves, and we are definitely happy to be doing this work and learning more about Portland, as Susan was saying. Our goals at the Center for Education Equity are to improve and sustain systemic capacity of public education systems to address problems caused by segregation and inequities. We hope, and our goal is also to increase equitable educational opportunities for students regardless of race, gender, class, national origin, or religion. And we provide technical assistance and training to states, school districts, and community-based organizations within our region at the request of school districts. And then this is our contact information should you need to reach out to us. And we bring you greetings from Susan Schaefer, who is our executive director. I'm going to turn it over to Susan so she can tell you a little bit more about our work.
I just want to give you a few examples of the kind of work that we do, because this all sounds good at the high level, but what do you actually do? So we do universal projects that could be webinars or presentations for professional development that are circulated. They could be toolkits like the Restorative Practices Toolkit that we're working on for administrators, or the Data Inquiry Cycle with a focus on equity. Those are things that are universally available. We also do targeted assistance. An example might be doing some focus groups for a school that was cited by the Office for Civil Rights that tried to make significant changes and wanted to know, have we made any difference? So we might go and do focus groups with different parents, students, administrators, and see what their thoughts are. We also do intensive projects, and an example of that might be work that I'm doing with a district over the last 3 years, and it will continue, where they had a disproportionate number of students who are black males that were suspended, and were suspended for very long periods of time. And so that's an example of an intensive project, because that is not going to be solved with a couple of PD sessions or some pamphlets and booklets. So our work ranges, and while our resources are limited trying to cover all of those areas, we work very hard to be responsive and to work in partnership with districts that want to make a commitment to equity and to change. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Susan and Carmen, for introducing yourselves to the board. I am keeping them very busy today and the next 2 days on the listening tour, which we wanted to include you in, which was one of the reasons we wanted to do the equity update tonight, so you could just hear a little bit about their work. So they're meeting with lots of our folks. So our fourth strategy in equity is around becoming a trauma-sensitive school. And so, oh look, you're right behind me. So I'm going to actually just turn it over.
I'm going first. Hi, I'm Melissa McStay. I'm one of the social workers at Deering High School, and Chris Salamone. And I'm also one of the members, well, actually, we both are one of the members of the social emotional learning work group. And part of our work right now is that we're trying to define what trauma-sensitive schools looks like, and I think each district is going to make a different definition. And so our work right now is to look at what that means for our school district. And really what we're talking about a lot now is that it begins with professional development around how trauma and adverse child experiences affect students' learning, and what are the ways we can build practices and strategies to mitigate that and buffer that for students. And so really working to get all staff trained in that understanding. And then Chris, I think, is going to say a little bit about some opportunities for people to learn more deeply in a different course that he's teaching as well. And we're also looking to develop what are some strategies that all schools across the district could be using, and both in practices. So that's something that the group is looking to develop by the end of this year. So as we start a new school year, no matter what school you're in, you will be, certain strategies will be used for students to help them feel safe and supported in the school so that they can access their learning in a better way. Let's see, I think that's, so one piece, multicultural groups that I think Chris will also speak a little bit about. There are some cultural specific groups that are happening in some of the schools with social workers paired with cultural brokers doing specific groups, and some of those are targeted for kids who might have more trauma experiences in their background. So we're piloting one at the high school, and there are several happening at the elementary level as well.
So as I said before, I work at Ocean Avenue Elementary School and have been for 3 years. And when I arrived there 3 years ago, it took me not very long to realize that there were probably 3 or 4 students in every class that were having trouble accessing their education because of trauma in their background. So we implemented a number of different strategies starting last year, and I just want to give you an update on a few of them. Every classroom teacher began teaching zones of regulation in the morning, so that we had part of our morning meeting was that kids would begin to learn a little bit about how their bodies and minds were feeling and were they ready to access their education that day. So they're beginning to get some self-awareness. Second, we put together we had a mindfulness expert that came in and worked with all the teachers in all the classrooms so that when the kids became aware that their bodies and minds were not ready to learn, what are some strategies they could put in place that could help them to do that? So it's, you would come by our school at 1 o'clock and you would see the 4th grade wing of the school where kids are all standing up doing yoga poses and mindfulness activities that help them to regulate their minds and bodies and get ready to work. It's pretty impressive. The third thing that we have done is put calming corners in every classroom and throughout the building. so that every student knows that if they are getting to the point where they are having trouble, they're going to explode, they're having trouble focusing, they know there's a place they can go that's safe in the building, that there's strategies they can use there. And to give you an idea of how effective it can be, I have a student who has witnessed some unspeakable violence, frankly, and came to school and had a very difficult time sitting in class. Get violent very often and would be presented with math, and he'd run out of the room and he'd hide in his locker, wouldn't come out. So I've been working with him for quite a while, and the other day I was walking down the hallway, he came right up and hugged me and said, "Mr. Selma, I got to tell you something." He said, he presented with me math, I got upset, I went to the calming corner, I did the breathing activity, it calmed me down, I got back to work, it worked, it really worked. So that was, and I can give you a number of different examples with that. We also started doing the multicultural groups that Melissa alluded to, and we started those last year. And part of it was because we had many, many students that were coming from other countries that were coming in, frankly, they were fearful, disconnected, pretty lonely, and it was very difficult for them to get started and acclimated to school. So the focus of these groups is really to help kids have a safe place where they feel some connectedness. And so, again, I'll give you just one other quick example. There was a student the other day that was crying in the library. They called me down and said, she's been crying, sobbing, she won't leave the library. Came to my office, I put down the interpreter line, and it turns out she's just completely overwhelmed. That she had just arrived a couple weeks ago, she couldn't speak the language, she didn't know anybody. So I arrived in my group a little while later, and in she comes with the two girls that had brought her arm in arm and said, we wanted her to come, she's new, she doesn't seem like she's doing, she'd love this group. So she came for a couple weeks, and the other day, all the kids had left, and she was up at the bulletin board, and I wanted her to go back to class. I was saying, go back to class, and she was writing on the board, and I didn't know what she was writing. So she left, and then I go and look at the board, and she said, "Thank you so much for this group. It's the one place I feel happy and a big heart." And so these groups and these things are working. The other thing that Melissa had mentioned a minute ago is that Peter McCormick and I are teaching a trauma-related class for the district. It's one of the 45-hour lane change courses that we're teaching. And sometimes when you teach, and I'm not a teacher, I'm a social worker, but if teachers will say that sometimes you're in front of a class, and if you have an invigorated class, you become invigorated. This group of teachers that I've been with, we spend our time reading the latest research, looking at different programs that work throughout the country. They bring in things that have worked in their classroom and demonstrated for the other people in the class. And I'm telling you that we all left there every week sort of excited and trying new things in the classroom and coming back next week and saying, "This worked, I tried it, this didn't work," but it's been really an exciting thing for me, and I think I'm hoping that more and more teachers will take it because I think it's real important. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa and Chris, for both your social work perspective and these examples on trauma-sensitive schools work. So we're almost there. Just got two more. There is a lot to say about the cultural responsiveness work that has been happening. I'm going to save the culturally responsive work group content because it is so linked to the people goal, and I know you'll be having a people goal with our HR director, Barb Stoddard, and so I asked her if we could do that then, and she said yes. So I'm going to invite, where did they go? Oh, right there. I don't know why, it's like you're in my blind spot, those two chairs. Fiona Hopper and Alberto Morales to talk about the race course for PPS educators, and Fiona will talk a little bit about some of the work we're doing with some Wabanaki leaders. So, thank you.
I'm Fiona Hopper.
Alberto.
And we just finished the third year of Race in the U.S. Perspectives for Portland Educators. It's a class of about 25. And every single year we've taught it, we've had a wait list of over 30 for the course. And there just is not enough of us to meet the demand.
Yeah, and we've gotten great feedback from the teachers about things like having more time, having a part 2, wanting everyone to take it. We just had the final projects.
Yes, so in the final projects for the class, impact not just classroom practice, but also school culture. So people will design professional development sessions for their schools, as well as units that maybe cover a whole grade level, or in the middle school, a whole house. Some of them were linked to expeditions. So there are teachers who focus just on their individual classroom practice, but many of these final projects really ripple out into whole school change. And to give you a little bit of a sense of the class, I just jotted down some of the topics that we cover in a 12-session course, which is run essentially like a graduate class, 45 hours. It's less writing than a traditional graduate class, but the reading level, I think, or the reading load is about the same. We cover a reframe of U.S. history, white privilege, global views on race, intersectionality, and then how to bring conversations about race into the classroom, which is quite a lot to cover in only a 12-session class. And finally, I think we would both just emphasize how much teachers want more of this, more time, more ability to, more knowledge of how to talk about race in the classroom. As you know, we have a very white staff and a very an increasingly non-white student population, and teachers are eager for help to figure out how to approach the topic of race in their classrooms.
Yeah, it seems like there's been more and more situations where issues have arisen or conversations have started and teachers don't know how to handle it. Even questions about Black History Month, and should we celebrate it, or is it minimizing Black history to do it, and torn in between. And one of our participants, actually, that was his final project, was encouraging schools to do it and how to do it and how to handle those kind of conversations. That was my favorite part of it, because a lot of it is so heavy and you leave the class at the end of the night with that sense of heaviness, but then seeing the projects and the things that the teachers were bringing into their classrooms, and it was really hopeful and encouraging. So it's a good way to end it too.
And then I'll just spend a minute talking about the Wabanaki Leadership Group, which is sort of like my final project for the class. Last fall, I helped to assemble a group of tribal leaders to come and discuss with Malia and Barrett LD 291, the 2001 law passed requiring that Wabanaki studies be taught K-12 to all Maine students. And under the umbrella of Wabanaki studies is not just history. The law also requires that tribal governance structures, economics, land, and sovereignty, native rights issues also be taught. So in the November, we met for the first time, also with a Passamaquoddy parent whose children attend Portland schools, and that was our first meeting. And then in the winter, in conjunction with the class, Alberto and I offered a community of learners event that James Francis, the tribal historian from the Penobscot Nation, helped lead a discussion about LD 291 and Wabanaki history and contemporary issues. And we also viewed a film that he had made. And then in March, Malia and Barrett and I and a group of tribal leaders met again to continue to talk about how we can come into compliance, continue to come into compliance with LD 291 throughout the district, as you saw tonight at Peaks Island, already happening in certain places.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alberto, Fiona. So we've reached our final strategy, which is adult education, and I understand that Anita has a broader update for you coming soon, but we'll take this opportunity because it is one of our 6 strategies in equity to talk about 2 of the equity-related Portland adult education things.
Yes. So the 2, as Barrett mentioned, we will be doing a larger presentation sometime in June, but I just wanted to talk about a couple of different things. The HiSET Lab is a new strategy. So one of the things that we noticed was people would come in to take the HiSET test, they would fail at their initial practice test, and then they would leave. And we didn't have a way of engaging them. We would say, you know, you can come, you can take classes, but for various reasons they didn't want to do that, or they weren't able to do that. I mean, one of the problems with, or one of the realities of adults is they have lives. They have families, they have children, they have jobs. And so one of the things we thought we would like to do is have a more flexible place for them to come and to learn. So with some funding from the Sam L. Cohen Foundation and from Friends of Portland Adult Ed, we've just recently opened our HiSET Lab, which will be a place where people can come, utilize some online resources within their schedules. We hope to have some daytime time, some evening time, to help them to prepare to take the HiSET. The other thing that we're hoping is that if they get into the school, they might say, oh, gee, I could take this math class. Because again, we do have classes that are in the daytime, in the evening, and if we can hook them in, perhaps we can get them to take the classes. So that's one effort. The other is actually the New Manor Resource Center, and again, I gave you the little card to whet your appetite to maybe go look at the annual report. The New Manor Resource Center is not new, but is really a very, very strong component in terms of Portland Adult Ed dealing with people with barriers. Primarily, their focus is on foreign-born professionals, and the work is amazing. Every day I have a new group of people who are saying, the people who come out of your job classes are amazing. They are head and shoulders above other students. There's just a lot of amazing work going on. And this just gives you a little bit of information and hopefully more to come. Thanks.
Sorry, Anita, I had that titled wrong. Apologies. So what comes next is continued focus in this area. We have a lot going on, but it's not just me. So that's the only downside, as Malia Nally will say, is that just having an equity specialist doesn't mean it's all on me. This is really about all of us, and how do we continue to enhance our equity lens? How do we continue to have that be a foundational part of our work? So we're gonna keep on that. So in the interest of time, just want to note we are very lucky to have some very generous foundations and donors that help us be able to do this work. So Gorman, Maine Community Foundation, Cohen Foundation, Susan and Carmen are here. That their services are available to us because it's funded through the Department of Education. And the Betterment Fund and Bank of America as well. So that's probably not actually all of them, but a lot of what you just heard about is funded through those kinds of projects. So I know you have more going on tonight than just this show. Though I'd love to talk equity more, you're very welcome to email me with questions. I'm happy to field any burning questions anyone has at this moment. Well, great. Thank you so much for your time. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
And I just want to recognize the amazing work that this represents today. It's obviously a small snapshot of, the amazing work that all of our staff is doing around this. And, all of the people that were here today are great examples of the equity focus in the district. A lot of this work predated our goal. The race class that Fiona and Alberto are teaching is a class that's been in place for a number of years. Some of it is new, and I am just incredibly proud this morning when Cabinet spent a while with our friends at the Center for Educational Equity, and we talked about what's going well and what are the challenges. We really wound up spending a lot of time on the tremendous work that is currently happening, and clearly there are a lot of challenges and lots of things that we still need to do, but it was really invigorating, I think, for all of the Cabinet to be a part of that generally upbeat conversation. So we definitely are looking forward to continuing this work and continuing to bring updates for the board on this. So.
I just want to say that this was a very exciting presentation, and I know that the board was really excited to hear about it too, and I'm sure that they have burning questions right now, and they're just being quiet because they're trying to be time sensitive. So I'm sure they'll reach out to you, and we thank you very much for this work. This is excellent work. Thank you. All right, next math curriculum.
So I'm going to let Malia Nally talk about our math curriculum adoption. This is something that we previewed for you about a year now, that we would be, over the course of this year, we would be working to bring to fruition the ongoing process to adopt a middle school math curriculum. And so I am going to let Malia take this away.
Okay, great. And I am going to do, this will be a briefer update, and I will be joined by Jesse Robinson, who's our middle school math coach, who started working with us this year and coaches all middle school math teachers across the 3 schools, as well as Suellen Santiago, who is our principal at Lincoln Middle School. So just to put this in context, policy IJJ, selection of educational materials, notes that there at the last sentence, the superintendent or designee will keep the board informed about educational materials and textbooks purchased for the school unit. So this is us coming kind of formally and officially to you all to provide that update. We did cover this at the last curriculum committee as well. So before we talk a little bit about kind of how we were approached this process and then the information we collected and the conclusion we came to, I want to ground us in why. Curriculum matters a lot in terms of student achievement. This is one example of many research analyses that speaks to the impact and effect size of curriculum on student achievement. So here you see results of a meta-analysis that looked at the impact of curriculum on student achievement, found an average effect size of 0.45, which really amounts to about 18 percentage points difference. So the difference between a student getting a 50% on a standardized test versus a 68%. And I think what's important here too is that it points out that this is greater than the influence of a student's home or a school. And so really you're looking at teacher quality and then instructional materials as 2 of your biggest key levers here. There's other research that points to that I'll just kind of skim through here, but I think the big idea again is this matters a lot in terms of student achievement and, as you see here, equity. So we just talked about equity. In 2015, the study found that low-income students are less likely than high-income students to have high-quality content and materials in their classrooms. And so this is something, when we talk about practices, that really matters a lot, that we have really consistent, high-quality content and materials in all of our classrooms. So in terms of how we wanted to approach this, so this process started last year, prior to me actually being in this position, and there was a process in place led by our interim CAO, Sharon Prey, and the team to try to come to a consensus decision about what we would want to adopt across our middle schools. And in the spring, the team concluded that we had not gotten to a decision that people were confident about, and that it was better to pause and refresh our process than it was to force ourselves into a decision and to move forward. And so I think the team at the time made a very wise decision to put this on hold and to kind of revisit what we wanted to do to move ourselves toward a better, stronger, consensus-based decision. And so in that, we tried to be very intentional about what mattered to us. So here you see some of the principles of our process. These are like the guiding principles that we tried to be explicit about throughout the process. So first, transparency. It was very important to school leaders and to teachers that we were really transparent. What was our objective? How were we going to go about it? And that we would communicate with people ongoing throughout. Second, we wanted to make sure that teachers would be given the opportunity to offer feedback, so that this wasn't just the decision-making, of, wow, 1 or 2 people, but rather that all teachers had voice in this decision and in the recommendation. Third, we wanted this to be data-driven, and so not just people's personal thoughts and experiences, but we wanted to have a very data-driven process. And finally, we wanted the criteria we were using to make our selection to be grounded in our core beliefs about great teaching and learning. In terms of the criteria, so these were the 6 criteria that we looked at and collected qualitative and quantitative data against. So first, we wanted to make sure that any instructional materials had strong alignment to the Maine learning results and Common Core standards. Second, we wanted to evaluate usability. So great if something's really aligned, but you have to be able to use it. So is it practical? Is it usable? Third, a top priority for us was to consider the supports for English language learners and students on IEPs that are embedded into the program, and how considerate of those different learning needs is the program for our teachers. We're looking at how engaging is it for students. So we want this to be something that creates engaging, relevant experience for our students. Is there strong professional development associated with it? We all know that it's one thing to adopt something, but without support and professional development, it really isn't necessarily going to be implemented successfully. So professional development was something we wanted to look at explicitly in selecting the program. And then finally, we looked at cost. We, this year, focused our process around a investigation of 3 specific curricula, so Engage New York, Open Up Resources, and Glencoe. The first 2 we decided to look more deeply at because we knew kind of at a surface level they aligned with many of our selection criteria in terms of standards alignment, usability, and engagement. Glencoe we used because it was part of the process the previous year that had more support and had more teachers across the middle schools that were using parts of it, and so it felt like one that we wanted to look at more closely. And then finally, from a process perspective, these are some of the kind of methods we use to get the data and to get the information to give us our insights about each of those selection criteria. So Ed Reports is a nonprofit organization that has teachers who work nationally to really look closely at at curriculum against the Common Core standards. Secondly, we did our own internal teacher surveys around usability and engagement. So one thing I'll say actually in this methodology is we tried to figure out which strategy and data source was best aligned to the thing we were trying to understand. So something like a national nonprofit that has a really strong and structured process, they can look at the standards alignment, but we wanted our teachers to give us feedback on usability and student engagement because they are more uniquely positioned to give feedback on that from their vantage point. So each method we used was really intentionally chosen to align to the kind of information we wanted to get against the selection criteria. We got reviews from our ELL and special ed teachers. Then Jesse, who's about to pop up here and share some of what we learned, interviewed leaders at other schools using the different curriculum. And finally, we looked at what are the PD offerings and costs for each program. And I should say, well, yeah, actually, I'll hold that. So, Jessie Robinson is here, and she's going to just step you quickly through each of those kind of data sets that we found before Sue Ellen shares where we've landed and how we're going to move forward.
Great, thanks. Hello, everyone. So we first looked at Ed Reports. As Malia mentioned, it's a nonprofit, sort of like the U.S. News and World Report of K-12 curricular materials. And they focus their area in 3 sort of categories. The first one you'll see up there is focus and coherence. The second one is rigor and mathematical practices, and the third is usability. And you're able to see how each of the curricula did in each of those categories. So in this first slide, we're looking at focus and coherence, which are 2 of the major shifts of the Common Core state standards. Really, it's about focusing the standards, focusing where the standards focus, and then also making those connections across grade levels. And you'll see that all 3 curricula did pretty well with that. They're all green, there's 1 yellow in Glencoe, but for the most part they did well. On the next slide, you'll see rigor and mathematical practices, and so this is where there's really a divergence in terms of quality. So in Eureka Math and in Illustrative Math, which is also known as Open Up Resources, both of those did very well in terms of having a balance of the right level of rigor in all 3 in those curricula, and then the math practices, which is sort of the how of how math is taught. Those they also did very well, and this is where Glencoe scored pretty poorly, 7 out of 18, 7 out of 18, and 8 out of 18. And so the way that Ed Reports works is that if you don't pass a particular gateway, if you will, then they don't grade you on the next one. And so the last one was usability, and you'll see that Glencoe was not graded on that. But Eureka Math and Open Up Resources did very well, and especially in middle school, Open Up Resources did extremely well, whereas Eureka Math had yellows and they didn't do quite as well. So we were considering these, just the curriculum for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and so once again, you'll see that Open Up sort of rose to the top as a good choice. So we've also looked at teacher feedback, and as Malia mentioned, we looked at usability, how the curriculum would help teachers understand the standards and student engagement. This slide just shows which of the curricula had the teachers used, and so they didn't answer questions about curricula that they hadn't used. And so many of them had used Engage New York, a few of them Open Up Resources, and more of them had used Glencoe Math. So in usability, the scale was 1 to 4, so anywhere between, 2.5 and 4 were strong, positive, and across the board, teachers in Portland Public Schools thought that the curriculum were easy to use, and Open Up a little bit more than the other two, but overall, they all did pretty well. With supporting teacher in terms of planning with standards, that was something that was part of our criteria, and again, they all did pretty well with that. They felt like they learned about the standards while they were teaching, the curricula sort of helped them understand the standards even at a deeper level, which is something that we look for in a curriculum. And then engagement, you'll see. This is where we are looking at student engagement. So is this curriculum engaging for students? Does it create learning opportunities that are relevant and exciting and also accessible? And this is where Open Up really came out with flying colors, and Glencoe not so much. We then also had a group of ELL and special ed teachers do a sort of a deep dive into the curriculum, all 3 curricula, and you can see the criteria on the left, but just visually you can see that Open Up Resources has really robust supports for students with special needs and ELLs, and the other 2 did fine. There's a lot of yellow in there, but not as strong as Open Up. So that was pretty apparent just by looking at that visual. And then we did an analysis of PD and costs. And as Malia mentioned, once again, the PD is super important for a curriculum. If you just give a curriculum to teachers, it's almost impossible for it to be successful because, as we all know, implementing a curriculum is a very sort of difficult but exciting task, but very difficult and needs a lot of support. So we looked for these things on the left in terms of PD. Was it grounded in the Common Core state standards? Was it focused on equity, ensuring that all students could be successful? Was it differentiated? And was there ongoing support? So not just like the initial orientation, but was there ongoing coaching and additional PDs that were available? And Engage New York and Open Up Resources came out strong in that area, and there was very little PD available beyond sort of the initial orientation in Glencoe, and it wasn't really at the level of quality that we were looking for. In terms of costs, this was sort of interesting to us that so both Engage New York and Open Up are free online open educational resources. So you can go online right now and access all of their curriculum for free, which is great. What was that? And they're also nonprofits, yes, thank you. Glencoe is a for-profit organization, company, I should say, and you have to purchase everything that you use. However, the total cost turned out to be less for a couple of reasons. One was that they don't have as much PD, and so if we invest in PD, it's going to cost a little bit more. And additionally, for Engage New York and Open Up, we really wanted to use the consumables because we feel like that allows students to use the materials easily. If you have, a range of tech abilities in your teachers, like you want to make sure that that's accessible, that they have paper copies accessible to them. Anyway, that costs money. And so it turned out that both Engage New York and Open Up, even though they're nonprofits, cost a little bit more. In terms of sustaining costs, it's also a little bit more for those two curriculum. Again, Glencoe, sort of because they have provided, I think, some cost-saving measures in terms of the books that they provide and less PD costs, it comes out to less money. So, drum roll please, we chose a curriculum, and Sue Ellen is going to talk about which curriculum we chose.
So for the big reveal, if you haven't caught on yet, really, I'm like, this is not going to be a surprise to anyone, I hope. So the recommendation that we are making as a group is the Open Up resources, the illustrative mathematics. And I would just say that, based on the data that you saw in those previous slides, I think it should be evident why. Our teachers, our administrators, are all really have a high degree of buy-in to this choice. And that's unique. And for those of you that have been around a while, I don't mean to just look at you, Jenna, but who've been around a while like I have, I have been in this district for 21 years and 11 of it, my first 11 was as a math teacher. There has been a continued conversation since 1998 and probably before that about, what is going on with middle school math. And this is really the first time that I can say with confidence that I feel like we have gotten it right. This curriculum is different. So what we've chose here is really something that has been refined and practice in the field by teachers, by educators. That means a lot to our teachers. Like real people have tried this out with real kids and have experienced many of the same challenges that we face. The fact that it's designed for diverse classrooms is obviously extremely attractive to us. We need to have something that's accessible, yet holds all of our kids to high standards, regardless of their disabilities, abilities, language background, that we know that all of our kids can reach grade level standards to a very rigorous level, and this does that. And also the fact that, it's available for free, although you just saw in the previous slide, nothing is ever free, right? But that's wonderful too. For me, some of the things I just want to highlight really just tie in what Malia presented and what Jesse shared. This time, I want to promise you is different. We had a middle school adoption, math adoption, probably, 6 to 8 years ago or so. And, a lot of money was invested to purchase a math program for the middle schools. And unfortunately, that was not done in a process the process you just saw described. Teachers did not have voice. Teachers did not have the opportunity to use and play with some of the materials that were being looked at. And we did not get any professional development, none. And so it shouldn't really be a surprise that what happened was those materials stayed, unfortunately, in many of our schools, very little use, certainly not consistent use across the 3 middle schools. And it's so exciting to know that this time is different. Another reason I would also say is that, Ben Donaldson from Lyman Moore and Caitlin LeClaire and I, we can all say that if our teachers were standing here tonight, almost 100% of them would say they can't wait for next year. And actually, they don't have to because their professional development is starting this spring. All of our math teachers are going to have 2 days of math professional development this spring to get them ready to launch their fall units. They're going to have time over the summer. They're going to have embedded professional development time all year next year built into our calendar. I mean, It's been planned really well, and it's an incredibly strong resource, and I think we're all really excited to actually use it with kids and know that it's going to be hard, but the additional pieces, we have an amazing math coach and support for our teachers, somebody who's in their classrooms every day, helping to make their teaching practice better. And by having this resource, we can focus on what Malia showed was the #1 impact on students, which is all the high quality teachers we already have. We have that. With this high quality instruction materials, we can help our teachers focus on instructional planning and assessment to very high degrees so that all of our kids can achieve. And I think in a few years, it's going to take us a couple years, you're going to see an incredibly dramatic shift in the math achievement in the middle schools.
So next steps are, #1, parent communication. So we wanted to update you all first, and we've got talking points ready to roll in the school-specific communications going out through the principals. So that will be happening shortly. Sue Ellen talked about have trainings coming up in the spring. So we have teacher leaders from the schools going to an intensive in Atlanta where they're kind of really going to get deeply steeped in the program, the rationale behind it. And then we have our 2-day training for all of our teachers here in Portland. And then finally, we've already planned out the unit launches that happen about every 6 weeks that will occur throughout next year. So that's it. I don't know how we're doing on time. Not great. That's a wrap. You know how to get in touch with us.
Okay. So in the interest of trying to catch the 8:45 ferry, the superintendent and I just discussed the one item on the agenda tonight that we absolutely need to take up is the personnel items. And I thought we could do the first reads, the personnel items, and I would ask for a motion to table the rest of the business items. Okay, so motion to postpone until the next meeting made by Ms. Thompson. That's for the old business items. Seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. Any discussion on the postponement? Seeing none, all those in favor of postponing items A and B under old business? That's unanimous. With the students voting in the affirmative. New business, we have first read to revise policy IKF, graduation requirements. First read to adopt a resolution on school boundary and school capacity review. First read to revise policy JICI, student dress code. First read to revise policy AC, non-discrimination, equal opportunity, and affirmative action. First read to revise policy BBAB, student representatives to the board. And that brings us to personnel items. Consideration and action to approve the personnel items listed. Is there a motion? Ms. Vendel, seconded by Mr. Atkinson. Would the superintendent like to speak to this motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. Tonight I bring before the board for your approval 2 groups of probationary educators that I am nominating for renewal with Portland Public Schools. This action is required by Maine statute Title 20A, Chapter 503, Section 13201, which states that superintendent shall nominate and the board shall approve all teacher nominations for employment. Under the same statute, I am required to notify all probationary teachers of my intention to nominate or not nominate them for an additional teaching contract by May 15th. Each year, we bring forward 2 groups of probationary teachers for your approval, those who are nominated for another probationary year of teaching and those who have completed the 3-year probationary period and are now being nominated for a continuing contract. The first group in your packet is a list of 45 teachers who have completed their 3-year probationary period with Portland Public Schools, and I am nominating each member of this group for a continuing contract with the district. And Barb, do we vote for these separately, or is this one motion and one vote? Okay. All right. And the second group is a list of 102 teachers who have been employed less than 3 years in the district. I am nominating each member of this group for an additional probationary year of teaching in the district.
Okay, so just so people are clear, we're voting on items A and B all in one slate. We do not have public comment on personnel items. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the personnel items listed, please indicate. It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative. And I believe that we do have a member of the public who would wish to address us this evening.
Hi, I'm Sharon Cohen, 131 Central Avenue, Peaks Island. 2 students in the school. I'll be quick. I'm speechless that we're trying to increase people coming to the island to come to our school, children, what visioning, I don't know what the population is. I'm curious what the state of the school is. Clearly, we don't have time. If adults are any indication what our children will do, they will not come and stay on Peaks Island. Sorry. I had a little kind of something else and stuff, but clearly you're going to need to go for the boat. So I still really would like to know what the state of Peaks Island schools are, but you can't answer, so I don't know.
I'm going to stay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I would close public comment and I would call for a motion for adjournment. Ms. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Rodriguez. All those in favor? It's unanimous with the students voting in the affirmative.